Okay, sorry, but no, that points to a blaring contradiction of Luke, Paul's secretary. When was Luke Paul's secretary? Wasn't it Silvanus, Silas? Or Barnabas? Or didn't even Paul write this? I'm writing this with my own hand. And why would he need a continuous secretary when he's going to different places when the Greeks could read and write, especially if they were Jews. Jews were very literate people back then. Still are today, but they were the first of one of the first societies, if the first society, put an emphasis that everybody should be able to read and write, or at least read, at least recite. That reciting part, you should know that if you're into the Tanakh, or, well, actually, you don't accept, obviously, David, so you only go by the Pentateuch, which you keep calling it. I might add, the Judaizers don't form new laws to follow based on doctrines that come from the wording of prophets or passages. Why on earth would you follow the prophets? And sorry, forgive my Hebrew, the Bereshith, in the beginning, or the book of Genesis, through to Deuteronomy, there is no afterlife. There is no resurrection. There's neither an immortal soul, nor is there a resurrection. It is your name shall live forever. It's not until Daniel that you get something like a resurrection. And you could say Ezekiel, but that's just the dried bones. Not to mention that God never commanded a temple, and if you're only going by the first 5 books, there is no afterlife. Actually, there's no mention of Messiah being sent, really. I mean, you can look back through with Christian eyes and see, the seed of Eve will crush the serpent, but it doesn't say the serpent is Satan, and in that respect, Satan isn't really the enemy of God, more like a prosecuting attorney. He could actually be an angel in league with God if you're reading just the Torah. So would you follow the Sadducees? Would you be in line with them? My article is hiding in plain sight, exposes Paul as our arch enemy. Who's our? All my articles do pretty much. I have to get back to work now. I'm surprised to tell others to wake them up. The Codex Vaticanus has people under a spell. Spells are real if you believe the Torah. The Codex Vaticanus, not the oldest, and I'm Syriac, we don't go by that. You ever heard of the Peshitta? It's Targum. Excuse me. This one I use a lot, but it's straight from Aramaic. The Masoretic text can't be trusted, as you know. But I use the Spanish one as well. I was sent that by somebody who was a practicing rabbinical Jew and came to the Syriac Church, the Syriac Antiochian Church. Or those who struggle with God. This is right. But no, I hate Paul. He is our arch enemy. Epistles of John are bunk. Look up Johannine, comma. You mean comma Johannian? Are you trying to say Kama Yohanian, not Johannine Kama? Epistles of Peter, a joke. Well, Epistles of Peter, they're not a joke, they just weren't written by Simon Peter. They actually reference, 2 Peter references Paul, and either it borrows from, I think it borrows from Jude, and that Jude doesn't borrow from it, but it borrows from Jude, and it tries to give an account of Paul's works. They just say obey Paul. 1 Peter doesn't. Not to mention they aren't real. Well, they're real. They're just not written by Simon Peter. And also, John has a different theology than Paul. Cerinthus just looked him up. He's like a laughable book of Hebrews, so no. He likes the laughable book. Again, you're relying on enemies. You're relying on the adversary, so why aren't you, if you are relying on the followers of Paul to tell you what Cerinthus believed, then why not rely on Paul for everything? Because you're relying on the followers of Paul to tell you what Cerinthus believed. And you probably Wikipedia'd him. Cerinthus didn't use Hebrews. There were people who claimed he did, but it's only because he'd give these lists of, one of his followers might have written Hebrews. It's very possible. Very possible that a follower of Cerinthus. But Cerinthus was the enemy of John. Because he was the chief Judaizer. And you just looked him up. You mean you haven't read? You haven't done a 15-year study of what the Jews said about the writings from the 1st century to the 5th and 6th centuries, and everything that was written about the early Christians from the Jews, the Latin Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Persians, even the Arabs, and then what the Christians had said about this in the different various Christian communities and how they fought and what they thought. Would you agree with the Donatists? What do you think Traducianism? Tertullian and Origen, by the way, aren't church fathers, so again, you probably don't know who Ignatius of Antioch is, even though he wrote all his stuff around 105, which might be earlier than some of the stuff that's in the New Testament. Not to mention the Didache was written way before most of the stuff that we have in the New Testament. You should go to my website if you want to know what Judaizers are. You mean like how people say, well, I'm a Druid, and go to my website to check out what Druids believe. So I'm going to go to somebody who doesn't know who Cerinthus was, never read any of the early Christian writings, and you're going to tell me about that. I destroy the book of Hebrews, Acts, Revelations. Tell your scholar, Revelations. You mean the Apocalypse? And which Apocalypse? I know you mean the Apocalypse of John of Patmos, who's not John, the writer of the epistles or the Gospel of John. But it's Revelation. It's not Revelation. It's the Apocalypse. Oh yeah, and we don't read the Apocalypse of John. You're in the East. All of Paul in general point out errors in the Gospels. Again, you have authentic Paul, you have Ephesians, Colossians, and then you have the pastorals. So you're against all those authors. Okay. And like I sent you, if you're such a Judaizer, why don't you dig the first 7 letters of the first 7 letters of the Apocalypse of John of Patmos, because obviously those are 2 different works that got put together, right? But I should counter that onto you, because you obviously studied this more than me, even though for 15 years I've been reading every single early work of Christianity. I want to contact Pandora's Box and Life, Liberty, Love. We all of us should have a discussion, because they're Valentinian Gnostics. I'm Orthodox. I'll get David P. with them. Maybe not. There's another person I think that could deal with this better. Not that David P. with him is not good. I agree with him on many things, but we should have a Google Hangout and have the three sides: the Gnostics, Pandora's Box, and Life, Liberty, Love, me, and my guy, or just me alone. If it's just you alone, just you, me, and Pandora's Box. So we have three sides, and have a dialogue about this, because we don't need to debate or argue, because we're not going to convince each other, but just show the world what the sides are. And if you are, what you say is demonstrably true, then you'll win over the Orthodox Christians and the Valentinian Gnostics. Total win for you. But it's quite shocking that you've never heard of Cerinthus before me, and then you Googled him, and then you claim he liked Hebrews, even though you're relying on the followers of Paul to tell you that. You see where the logic kind of breaks down there, where I kind of have to, cock my head when I hear that, like, huh? Alright, peace to you, and take it easy. TheJudaizer2000 Part 2. This is 2.